Hello, I'm Officer Gail Griffith, and joining me today is Sergeant Mike McCormick from the Cottage Grove Police Department, and he's here with me today to talk about a very serious phone scam that's been happening to some of our seniors here in Minnesota. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. So, you know, it's not a new thing that's been happening, these phone scams, but it seems like it's been kind of ramped up. And so I know that you have a lot of good information that we can share with our seniors. So do you want to tell us a little bit about what this new phone scam is that's targeting our seniors?
Yeah, you know, what's going on is that the bad guys are calling these seniors and pretending to be from Social Security Administration or their doctor's office or a bill collector or Medicare or anything like that, and then they're trying to get information from them. They'll say something to the effect of, we have to update our policies, we have to update your personal information, at which point they're looking for anything personal, maybe Social Security number, something like that.
And we have had folks here in Cottage Grove and all over the county, really the state, that actually give that info out.
Right.
Yeah, and so that's what's kind of scary about this particular phone scam, because they're very believable, these folks that call. And disclosure of this information can obviously lead to some really tough, sort of serious consequences.
Right.
Can you tell us some tips maybe on what folks can do to avoid being a victim of this scam?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the first thing they need to do is make sure they never give out personal information on the phone, because there's really no way to verify 100% who you're talking to. You know, the doctor's offices and Social Security, they will never call you and ask for personal information, especially Social Security numbers, because you can unlock a whole bunch of new issues for people when you start giving that kind of information out. You know, I always tell people, make sure you never give that out. I think I would probably start right there. It's okay to hang up the phone and call the numbers that you have. If it's your doctor's office, it's okay to say, let me call you back. And if they're persistent, they're probably not who they say they are. And if you hang up, you hang up. You know, my mom's a senior, and I talk to her all the time about these things. So never give out personal information on the phone. I believe the Social Security Administration sends everything by mail first. So verify the number before you call, before you give that.
And that's really good advice. And I think a problem for a lot of seniors are, you know, these folks can be really persuasive and really pushy. And you know, a lot of seniors want to be polite, and they don't want to hang up because they feel like that's rude maybe, or you know, it's not in their nature to hang up on somebody. And sometimes they, you know, for lack of a better word, kind of get bullied into sharing some of this information. And one thing personally I would like for them to know, because my folks are seniors as well, you can always say, all right, I'll call you back. I need to look into this, or I need to ask some questions, and I'll call you back. And then they can make that phone call, or they could call us.
Absolutely. I always tell people to do that too, because we might have some more areas that we can look into, and a lot of the seniors aren't computer savvy, so they don't really know where to go for that. They may not have, you know, any loved ones close by, whereas we do have some tools that we can look into things and verify that, in fact, that yes, it's a reliable source.
Yeah, and I've actually talked to a couple victims about not necessarily this scam, but some similar phone scams, which we're going to talk about. But I know that one gal that I spoke to, she, you know, if you ask for a callback number, if they're hesitant to give a callback number to you, that could be a clue as well. Like, they're not legit if they're not willing to share callback number. Or sometimes they'll give them one, and if they do call it back, it goes nowhere. So that's kind of a clue too. And the other thing that I think folks should know is we would like to know about these scams. So they should call us afterward, you know, after they speak to these, so we can kind of keep track of it, and maybe they would have a number for us or something that we could investigate.
Sure. You know, we can look through sometimes through the FBI. They're helpful, especially if this is a nationwide type of thing, because this is something that they're going to want to know as well. You know, the Attorney General's office is a really good one. They'll track it more on a local level. You know, the problem is when these are out of the country, it makes it very difficult for us to follow up on. So the less information, the better. Like
Absolutely.
I always tell people to do your research, and if you want to call your children, your grandchildren, or the police, or someone you trust, I'd always recommend that, because if they're legit, they're gonna completely understand, because all of these companies know that this is going on right now.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
always err on the side of caution on those things, for sure.
And, as a victim, it becomes really confusing what to do. So let's say we have someone who receives one of these calls and believes them and gives that information out. Can you talk just briefly about that? Like, what are the long-term effects of that of becoming a victim of this?
Well, the first part, one thing I'd like people to know is that if people get frustrated and they give out just a little bit of information and then hang up, they start a file. So if they know that if you say something about the effect of, I go to bed at 8 o'clock at night, please don't call, well, they're going to write that down. And then if you give them something, well, I have a doctor's office at 2 in the afternoon tomorrow, please don't call. So now they've got a file, and they get to know your life history. And eventually, some things that we've seen is that they start befriending these people because they know all these things about them, whereas if you give these little bits of information, you don't think that much about it. And all of a sudden, this person calling seems to know you really well, and you start letting your guard down. And that's one of the big things. Long term is the identity issues. We've seen seniors and even people younger than that giving away personal information. They start taking out credit cards in your name and that you don't know anything about, because if it's in a different state, another country, by the time you find out about it, you're getting collection notices. We've had one recent where they had 7 different credit cards out in their name and they didn't know anything about it. I've been to, unfortunately, more than one call where seniors have given up their retirement for something they believe is legit. They've made purchases or things that they're not sure of. So there's a lot of long term, to the point where one person I'm aware of has lost their residency.
Yeah, thousands of dollars.
Yeah, they couldn't afford to stay where they're at anymore, and it was a senior facility, and everybody feels terrible, but unfortunately, you've still got to be able to afford
and
it.
it's a difficult investigation for law enforcement, local or federal, really, because like you said, it can be, the bad guy can be from anywhere in the world, and they don't always know until they've lost thousands of dollars. And then trying to figure out where all these different transactions happened, maybe, if they did get a credit card in their name. It's a difficult investigation, and so...
Right. One thing I've seen is that it's a different generation, so people have a lot of pride. So rather than call up and say, I messed up or I need help, they try to fix it on their own, and really what happens is they get deeper and deeper.
It gets worse,
right?
Absolutely.
So they've got to be able to have people they trust that they can include with this.
Yeah, and so those folks that maybe don't have a family member or some advocate for them, certainly we hope that they can call the police.
Right.
Okay, so there's other scams too that really target seniors.
Right.
I know you have a list. Can you share some of those with us?
Sure. One of them that we get a lot are the thing in the mail about you've won $100 million in the worldwide.
And we all get just a little excited. I get excited over that one.
But then you get to thinking, it's like, well, I don't remember ever entering a sweepstakes. And that should tell you something right away, and most of the time that's the case. But you'll see something of, you've won, fill in the blank, $10 million, $100 million. I've seen them higher than that. And all you've got to do is send us a check from Western Union or the green dot card that you can get at Walmart or Walgreens or any types of those drug stores or whatever, and so you send this check for $500. Well, you never see your return because you get sure enough you'll get another phone call because you've got to fill out all your information to get this $100 million, and next thing they know they're getting the calls, and now they're in, and you keep thinking, well, it's coming any time, and they'll keep asking for more money or more personal information about you. So that's one we see a lot, and most people realize that something isn't right, and the saying is if it's too good to be true, it's probably is. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think if it's legitimate and you win something, you shouldn't have to pay to win something. So if that's part of the catch, then that should be a red flag, that it might not be legitimate.
And along those same lines, we've also seen other, maybe not necessarily sweepstakes winnings, but we tracked down a relative of yours that's passed away, and they've got this money sitting there, and we'd like you to have it. So here's a check for $3,000. So we only want $2,000 of that. And these are all just hypothetical numbers,
Sure.
but we only want $2,000 of that. But since you're willing to hold on to this money and transfer it, take $1,000 for yourself. Well, it sounds great. So.
Sure.
You go in, and sometimes the banks don't always pick up on this bad check right away. It looks legit. It's a piece of paper. And the banks don't pick up on it right away, and now you've got your $3,000, and you go to Western Union or Green Dot or all these other different types of methods. And as soon as that's transferred, your money's gone.
Yeah.
And then the bank calls and goes, oh, by the way, that's not a good check. So now you just took $3,000. You're out. And you've probably given personal information along with it at the same time.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be sweepstakes, but I've gotten those things in the mail.
Yep.
And if people that are in the internet, you get those online too. You get your congratulations, you've got a car or something. There's one from Canada that's really big. There's one from Europe that's really big. So again, if you didn't enter, I'd throw it away. And most people do, but not everybody does.
No, they see it, and it looks exciting. It looks kind of fun. It looks legitimate, and so they open it up, and it's kind of scary.
It's a bad deal, and
It is a bad deal.
unfortunately, by the time that some people come to us, they're in big trouble.
Oh, they are.
Yeah.
And it's shameful that people prey on a more vulnerable population, but they're out there.
It's the number one scam in the world right now. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. So when people fall for $1,000 here or a lot, and they feel so awful. These are professionals that are doing this because of the money that it involves. They're bringing in more money than your top 500 companies in the world.
More than you and I are making.
Well, I wouldn't. maybe a little bit.
Maybe a little, right? Yeah.
So people always feel so bad, and then they don't call us because it's only. It's my lesson, $2,000.
Yep.
Or
they chalk it up to a bad. Bad decision they made. But yeah.
So meanwhile, this is happening to all these people, and people aren't talking about it. So the key is to watch out and know that these things. And if you're getting things, if you're winning things online or in the mail, there's.
Yep.
How many people do you really know that's won the lottery? I don't know any.
I don't know any either.
Right.
So, and, we don't mind taking those calls. And if it's legit, it's legit.
Right.
And hey, good for you. But if it's not, so kind of my point is, like, I hope folks aren't afraid to call us.
Absolutely.
Just to kind of check it out and see.
Yeah,
we're happy to look over that stuff.
And people think they don't want to bother us, and whether they think they're embarrassed because they made such an irrational decision in the first place in what they're thinking. And really, I mean, we're here 24 hours a day, and we deal with a lot of this. It's not unfortunately, we do. We do. But I've talked to some of these people on the phone, and they're convincing.
Oh,
it's pretty amazing.
They're pretty solid, and they're very pushy, very persuasive, and so it's easy to fall victim to them. Yeah. Any other scams you can think of?
I got a couple that we've dealt with on the street. One is we've had some tree trimming scams, and also there's the driveway scams. And don't get me wrong, there are legit people out there that are doing these things. But some of the things we've seen are door to door. When they say, "Hey, we just did your neighbor's yard and we happen to be here, we'll cut you a great deal." And maybe it's legit, but we've seen a lot of them that are not. They'll charge somebody $200. They'll say, "Well, we'll cut your tree or your trees in your front yard for $200." Well, then they show up tomorrow and, "Hey, do you want us to do the back ones too?" When they're thinking, "Well, $200, yeah, absolutely." So then they go and trim their trees, their bushes, or do yard work in the backyard, and all of a sudden they come up with a bill for $1,800, and they become very forceful. We need it now. To the point we had one a couple years ago where they actually drove a senior citizen to the bank and stood with them while they took their money out. And the gentleman said he literally felt threatened, and it felt like he was being robbed, and he really kind of was.
Yep.
But those are out there. Again, if you tell them no right away, people are afraid to shut the door on people or to hang up on people. They're there to hurt you. They're not there to help you. And if you shut the door on them, they're not your friend. It's okay to be rude to those people.
And are there some that ask for money up front and will do the work later?
Oh, absolutely. Sure.
So that's another thing. You don't usually pay before the work is done.
And you know what? Get a contract. You know, your legit people are going to have everything in writing. This is what we're going to do. Here's an estimate, sign and date. Go ahead and take that and say, okay, we'll come back next week while I can look into this.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they're going to say, well, sorry, we're heading back to Texas tomorrow, and this is a great deal. Well, sorry. See ya.
Then I guess I miss out on the deal. Yeah.
Right.
And they can check the Better Business Bureau. You know, often legitimate places will be listed in there, and the bad ones will be listed in there as well.
And they'll be listed there too. And if you haven't heard of them, you know, hang on. Let me give me some people that you've talked to, that you've done work for, and let me check on them. And you know,
there should be no urgency.
No,
is a key.
Yeah, quite often what they see is,
if they're legitimate, they should be able to wait a week for you to look into it or decide if it's what you want to do or can afford.
Sure. And what they see is, if you're a senior citizen, they're assuming maybe you're retired, so they're driving by your house and they're seeing you out doing yard work and you know, playing with your grandkids or the dog or whatever. So they know you're home. They know you take pride in your yard, so you become a target.
Yep.
So, you know, one of the big ones that we've seen, and I think, you know, a lot of people have heard of, and especially last year, it's called the grandparent scam. And this would be something where you get a phone call from someone, you know, maybe disguising their voice, saying, "Hey, this is your grandchild, and I'm, you know, pick a place. I'm, you know, I think one of them we came across was Wales, or I'm in Britain or whatever, and I'm in jail, and I need help. Please send money right away." Well, it works enough to the fact that it's circulated. If you check online, everybody in the country is dealing with this because it works. Because, you know, and I remember one of them saying, he said, "Please don't tell my parents, because I'm going to get in a lot of trouble because, you know, for whatever reason I'm not supposed to be here, or, you know, I don't think my parents can help me, but I know you can, Grandma. I know you can, Grandpa. Please don't say anything to anybody, but here's how you send the money." Well, this is a professional scam, and maybe they're guessing that you have grandchildren, or maybe again they've driven by your house, or they,
you know. You can find out a lot of information just by Googling a name or an address, you know what I mean? And so they can maybe figure that out. But, and it seems like, gosh, how would somebody fall prey to that? But they do, like you said. You know, they're convincing enough that, you know, they talk these folks into sending that money.
Sure. And I've done some presentations through the Minnesota Department of Public Safety, and it was the Alcohol and Gambling Division at that time. And they said that these bad guys will literally, they'll take this chart of information that they've gathered on you over the years, and they sell it to a different bad guy. So now the first guy has all your information, and he just sold it to somebody else. So all this stuff starts circulating. So once you become this victim, it's hard to shake that without changing a lot of your personal things, and sometimes that's what needs to be done.
It is, and it's tedious, and it's, you know, kind of. It's a lot of work to have to do that, but you may have to end up doing that.
Sure.
So.
You know, another one that we've seen is the online dating, and it's not even seniors, but you know, seniors again seem to fall prey to this a lot. You get someone that's single, and they themselves go looking for, you know, someone to befriend, and next thing they know, they become involved in a long distance relationship of someone whom they think, you know, cares about them to the point where even the person on the other end is sending pictures, because they get to know who you are and what you're looking for, and they'll start sending pictures of someone that you now all of a sudden think that you're speaking with, and they'll start asking for money. "Hey, I'd love to come and visit you, but I'm in another country and I can't afford it, or I live down south and I can't afford to get up here. Think you can send me some money, and you know, I'll bring the cash with me and I'll reimburse you, and then, you know, we'll have a great time when I come up." And well, it never happens. They keep coming up with excuses as to why they can't make it, and keep asking for more money. And unfortunately,
a lot of people keep giving it.
Another big one.
Because again, they're pretty convincing with their stories and their lies about why they didn't make it, or hey, I'm just hard luck again. I just need a little bit more, and so people keep being generous. But,
and that's social media in general. You have to be very careful. There are secured servers, but again, do some research on them, because there are secure servers that in order to sign up for things may ask for your social security, or more may ask for personal information. But just because they say they're secure, check into that first before you start giving that information.
Yeah.
For sure.
Good advice.
Yeah.
So if folks have any other questions about this kind of stuff or want some more information, where can they go?
Well, I always say start with us first, Cottage Grove Police Department, or wherever you live. Most police departments have really good brochures. You and I have talked about before some of the nice variety of brochures that we have at our police department. So that's one. There's a really good website that I found, and this is through the Attorney General's Office of Minnesota, so you can look at their office first. And this one's called minnesotahelp.info, so all one word, Minnesota Help. And it's not just victims of scams. There's a lot of good information, rideshare or other type of senior programs that are available offered through the state. So that's a really good one.
Good.
I think that's one. And then again, if you think that it's serious enough, and we're talking high dollar amount, if you decide not to go through Cottage Grove Police, you can go to the FBI, and that's fbi.gov. They may give you some information. I know the page itself has some really good connections if you feel that you've been scammed, or if you want to check out to see if you're about to be. But they may refer you back to us as well.
Sure.
So those are,
Awesome.
But there's plenty of good things out there, but before you get too far into that, do the research.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
My
That was
pleasure.
some really good information that you shared, really helpful for a lot of folks. So I think we can put up those websites at the end of the show here, so folks will have that. But thanks again for joining us.
My
Mike.
pleasure. Thank you.